Hey everyone, I'm here to talk about why Bloodborne is the ultimate test of skill and patience. For me, there are three things that separate Bloodborne from other games in the Souls series and make it the hardest game in the series. And those three things are the timing of your dodges, the positioning of your attacks, and then finally your patience with both of those things. Let's go ahead and dive into each one of these individually. First, we have the timing of your dodges. In my opinion, the dodge timing in Bloodborne feels the tightest out of all the Souls games. For me, this was the biggest adjustment coming from Dark Souls 3 into Bloodborne. The timing for a successful dodge is so incredibly strict in Bloodborne, especially when you get into the higher level areas like the old Yharnam and the Loran. In those areas, the enemies are quick, they're aggressive, and they will punish you if you do not have that perfect dodge timing. You can see here with the saw cleaver, it takes just a hair less than half a second to complete one full rotation of the saw. So you only really have about half a second to dodge this attack, and that's after giving the enemy enough time to wind up the attack. If you time your dodge incorrectly and you end up behind the enemy after dodging, you've now given the enemy an opening to land a guaranteed hit on you, because you put yourself behind them. And with the speed of the enemies in these higher level areas, this will almost always be a one-hit kill. But if you time your dodge correctly, meaning you dodge either directly before or directly after the enemy swings, you'll notice that the enemy leaves itself wide open to a riposte. This is actually a very common occurrence in Bloodborne. A lot of the enemies have these very telltale wind-up attacks that leave them wide open to a free riposte if you time it right. And by mastering this timing and becoming patient enough to wait for the opening, you'll find that you can stun most of the enemies in the game and enter this riposte state. It forces you to become much more patient with your attacks and really pick your moments. And speaking of picking your moments, let's move on to the second thing that makes Bloodborne the ultimate test of skill and patience, which is the positioning of your attacks. When it comes to positioning, there are the major things to consider. First, you need to make sure you're staying out of your enemy's range, but then also you need to make sure that you're within your own weapon range. This becomes particularly tricky with the positioning of your attacks because in Bloodborne, unlike Dark Souls, your weapon swings have a very short range, so you need to be incredibly close to your enemy to land a hit. Because of this short range and the high damage of your weapon, you'll often find yourself in situations where you need to attack multiple times to kill an enemy. And if you're not careful, this can leave you wide open to attacks from that enemy and even worse, from other enemies around you. And this is where patience is key, because if you remain not patient enough and you end up attacking too quickly or not spacing properly between your attacks, you're going to leave yourself open to a counterattack. What I found to be the best solution to this is to try and incorporate some of your special moves into your combat rotation. For example, the Healing Church's Whip has this move right here that can hit an enemy from a much longer range. So incorporating something like this into your combat rotation can help you keep yourself safe from counterattacks while still dealing damage. Another example is the isometric hammer here. The hammer has this powerful slam attack that hits for a lot of damage and also staggers the enemy. By staggering the enemy, you're right now giving yourself a moment of respite where you do need to worry about being attacked while you dealing damage. Mastering this positioning and learning what moves to use in certain situations will greatly increase your survivability. And that leads us into the final thing that makes Bloodborne the ultimate test of skill and patience, which is quite simply the patience itself. Bloodborne is easily the most unforgiving game I've ever played, and I think a lot of it comes down to how fast-paced the game is. Unlike Dark Souls, where there are a lot of slower, deliberate exchanges between you and your enemy, Bloodborne is much more fast-paced, and I would say it's closer to a fighting game than it is to a typical RPG. Because of this, you have to be constantly on guard and ready to react at a moment's notice. There's little room for mistakes in Bloodborne, and I feel like that really challenges your patience as a player. And that's really what separates Bloodborne from the other Souls games. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it helpful. If you did, let me know in the comments below. As always, I appreciate all your support, and I will see you all next video.